Welcome back, everyone, to the weekly Investor News podcast. How are we this week, Nick?
We are going very well, Owen. How are you?
I'm fantastic, actually. Having a great day so far, and it's still early.
It is still early, and I have a feeling this is going to be a really good week.
Yes, as opposed to the really good week last week.
Okay, well, I'm glad it was a really good week for you. It was a nice week for me. Very, very busy, but I've learned that being busy is better than being quiet.
True. And yes, please, Nick, while you're at that, tell us about your week last week in work, and what is it you do for your clients?
Well, I'm the owner of Hunt Scribe, which is a copywriting agency that writes content for property and finance professionals. And to give you an idea of one job we were working on last week, we wrote some website content for someone who's just starting a mortgage broking business.
Great. Okay. And
what about you, Owen?
Yes, well, the reason why we're talking every week is Leafield Real Estate is a specialist property management business. We work right across the country, or at least in 4 states. And the next state to come is Adelaide in South Australia, being the state. But yeah, this past week we've had a bunch of new managements come on in Townsville in North Queensland, and we're working with a buyer's agent on the ground there who has property management experience in the past, and she's helping a lot of our contacts in Sydney and Melbourne who are buying in Townsville to be able to help them with groundwork. So yeah, it's exciting times.
Oh, fantastic. I love Townsville. Such a lovely
Yeah?
city.
Really? It's been a while since I've been there. Luckily, we got people with on the ground with good eyes who know it well. But yes, maybe after cyclone season, I'll make a trip up there.
Fantastic. I'll come with you. I love Townsville. Really nice place.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into the news, Nick. What's happening this week?
Well, our first story, Owen, borrowers getting further ahead on their mortgages. The average borrower got further ahead on their home loan in the second half of last year, despite a rise in interest rates, according to the Reserve Bank. To quote the Reserve Bank, although net payments into mortgage offset and redraw accounts have declined relative to 2020 to 2022, extra payments increased in the second half of last year to around the pre-pandemic average of 2% of household disposable income. The downside, though, is that household savings rates have fallen, quote, in response to cost of living pressures. In other words, money that was previously being saved is now being used for mortgage repayments. Owen, are you surprised that borrowers are not just ahead on their mortgages, but have actually gotten further ahead?
Not really. It's not really, and I understand why people might be surprised at that. It's even though it's for the same reason I'm not surprised that we haven't had a huge amount of bankruptcies and huge amount of people that where banks have repossessed houses and selling them mortgagee in possession. It's because we've still got a healthy economy, we've still got healthy employment, and it's people are only selling their houses if they absolutely have to, and yes, there are pockets that are definitely not that case, but in general, and this is what this is talking about in general across the country. The economy is still fairly healthy. Yes, rising interest rates and rising cost of living has bitten, so that's chewed up a lot of people's savings. But people are also making an effort to continue to get ahead on their mortgage because they know that makes a difference long term. So that actually makes me feel better about the country and people in general with being mindful about what they're doing with their money.
It's interesting, Owen. Of course, these are aggregate statistics. So it's not the case that literally every borrower has gotten ahead on their mortgage and even further ahead, but the average borrower is ahead and has gotten further ahead. So that goes to show that the average borrower is a smart person who can see what's happening in the economy and realizes that, you know, times are a little bit harder, and it would be prudent for me not just to meet my mortgage payments, not even to get ahead of my mortgage payments, but to try to get further ahead so that I'm protected if I lose my job or if something bad happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's what everyone should try to do. Obviously, not everyone can in all circumstances, but yeah, that's what everyone should be trying to do. And and to bring inflation down. You're better off to not spend your money on things that you don't need right now, and you're better off to put that extra money into your mortgage to be able to bring your mortgage balance down. So that way, people are trying to save interest as interest rates were rising, and they've seemed like they've peaked now. And yes, they've still got savings that have been eaten up by the cost of living, as well as higher mortgage prices. But any extra, they're pumping into their mortgage, and that's perfect. That's the basics done. So I'm actually surprised in a really good way, and makes me feel positive about us being able to come out of this fairly well.
Do you have any theories, Owen? So prices and interest rates are higher today than 6 months ago. So then how do you think borrowers have been able to get further ahead on their mortgages? What have they been doing?
Well, it just shows that yeah, we were used to, especially during the pandemic years, when you couldn't spend money on a lot of things like overseas trips and going out to dinners and so on, that people got used to spending a lot of money. Um, and it's on consumer items. It was normal to have a delivery every day, if not twice a day. Um, and so it's now at the point where if people are able to yeah, because they've had to tighten their belt, it's all of a sudden, oh, okay, we got to watch what we're spending. So during those pandemic years, a lot of consumer-based businesses, yeah, they raked it in.
Well, this leads on very nicely to our next piece of news. We've been talking about the economy. The next piece of news, unemployment rises to 4.1%. The unemployment rate rose from 3.9% in December to 4.1% in January, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. That ended a streak of 22 consecutive months in which the unemployment rate was in the threes. The gradual increase in unemployment over the past year has been caused by the battle against inflation. The Reserve Bank has pushed up interest rates to take the heat out of the economy, which has both reduced inflation and increased unemployment. Owen, back when inflation started rising in 2022, the consensus view was that the Reserve Bank needed to increase interest rates to crush inflation. So I'm wondering, do you think the Reserve Bank has gotten it right on interest rates, or have they gone too hard or not hard enough?
Um, I would have argued when they were raising rates that they went consistently every month for too long or too much. Um, they could have done harder and faster increases to get there quicker with pauses in between. Um, that's my 2 cents worth of what they should have done. But whether they took that route or the route that they did, it what most matters is the end result. And the end result now is that inflation has started to drop. Yes, unemployment has started to rise, which is expected. but it hasn't been a huge increase. It's just 2 points, and which means that it looks like it's doing its job. So, and that's the most important part. We can always argue at the time when it's happening of whether they're doing it right or wrong, but it's the result in the end, which usually comes a good year or so later, and which is where we're at now. So it's good to see it's working from an inflationary point of view. Unemployment has risen slightly. We don't want it to rise too much further, and we don't want inflation to drop too much further. We don't want it to drop too dramatically too quickly either. We want that soft landing. So it's steady as it goes. I think it's going okay.
Looking ahead, and I'm very interested in this, the Reserve Bank, by raising interest rates so much, they've really slowed down the economy. Unemployment has now gone up to 4.1%. It's gradually increased over the past year or so. And the Reserve Bank has forecast that unemployment will rise from 4.1% now to 4.3% by the end of the year. So just a tiny increase. I'm wondering, Owen, given that the economy has slowed considerably over the past year, does such a small rise in unemployment sound credible to you? Do you think 4.3 sounds about right, or do you think it'll actually be higher by the end of this year?
Well, I think this is where the hard part is going to be. And because we're at that leveling off phase with the economy after the steep rise in interest rates. And so it's just going to be, this is going to be the hardest job of managing it now, because we want inflation to drop without allowing unemployment to rise too much too quickly, and so that we don't have to have any major fluctuations in interest rates. And that's where, depending on what happens in the next quarterly results with the CPI and unemployment rates, will determine whether or not we see a rate cut earlier than expected. So they're all sort of touting a September cut now, but if unemployment starts to rise a lot quicker and inflation starts to fall a lot quicker, then we could see rate cuts even sooner.
What's interesting about the things you've been saying, Owen, is the trade-offs involved. And there are no good options for the Reserve Bank. People can say the Reserve Bank has done the wrong thing, which is perfectly fine, but I don't think people are right if they're suggesting or implying that the Reserve Bank has good options. The Reserve Bank has only bad options. If they keep interest rates lower, yes, it will allow the economy to grow more, but it also, and keep unemployment lower, but it also means that inflation is going to be higher. If, on the other hand, they raise rates, yes, it means inflation is going to be lower, but unemployment will be higher and our mortgage repayments will be higher. There are no good options here. I guess they're trying to choose the least bad option.
Absolutely. They've really only got one lever, which is interest rates. And there's always going to be winners and losers of going up or down. So and I think that's where we need to treat it like the wind that blows. We can't really control the weather. We can't, just like we're not in a position to control interest rates. So it's just reacting to what happens in the market. So if the wind suddenly starts to blow one way, we maybe just have to change the tack of the sails and see where it takes us, and make the best of that situation then. So there are good and bad of all the situations. It's just a matter of understanding what they are so that we can react appropriately.
I like that win reference. That was very philosophical. Did you come up with that yourself, or did you steal that off Confucius?
No, it wasn't Confucius. I probably first heard that. When did I first heard that? A fellow by the name of Jim Rohn.
I love Jim Rohn.
Yes. He's not with us anymore, but yes, a few decades ago now, making me feel old thinking about how long ago it was, but that I first heard that. But yes, Jim Rohn always talked about the wind that blows,
Mm.
and it's just a matter of how we react to it. So it's we can sit there and go, this isn't fair. You know, I was happy with the way I was going in life, or we can just react to it and make a change. And being able to change and adapt is and having that ability is the best thing that we can have, in especially in the property market. Um,
You reminded me of another wonderful piece of Jim Rohn wisdom. Don't wish it were easier, wish that you were better.
exactly.
For our final story, Owen, new data confirms Perth is the hottest property market in Australia. And the good news is we're now going to talk about supply and demand. Across Australia, property spent a median 34 days on the market before finding a buyer during the January quarter, according to CoreLogic. So 34 days was the Australian median, but the city by city breakdown was Perth 11 days, Brisbane 22, Adelaide 29, Sydney 35, Melbourne 36, Canberra 42, Hobart 44, and Darwin 61 days. Are you surprised, Owen, to see so much variation among the capital cities?
No, it's like I'm not, but yeah, that's because I'm seeing it on a daily basis at the moment.
Mm,
Just looking at these figures here, it's on my other screen. If it's yeah, 11 days versus yeah, Sydney and Melbourne. It's yeah, a third of Sydney and Melbourne. So that's not surprising. It's the Perth market's very hot. We have to remember that during the pandemic years, even though it was difficult for Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane to be able to still build houses, they still were doing that, and they were getting materials in. Perth was locked up. The whole state was locked up. A fly couldn't get across the border. And so things like the building materials and so on. So yes, to come back to the supply and demand issue. So the the supply of properties over there is so low, and they are building now. I'm talking to builders over there, and with what they're doing, and guys that are doing new home sales, and it's happening, but they can't keep up with the demand, and because a lot of people in the eastern states weren't able to go there to be able to buy. Yeah, it was they didn't get the attention that the other states were, especially like Queensland, during the pandemic years. So they're really just playing catch up.
mm,
11 days, talking to a lot of the buyers agents that we speak to that refer to us for property management. A lot of them are all still buying in Perth. Adelaide is still popular, but look at their 29 days in Adelaide, so you can see the difference with Perth. It's it's a huge difference. Brisbane's still popular, but has leveled off quite a bit, and it would be interesting to see what the Brisbane figures were at the height of its popularity a couple of years ago, of days on market, because a lot of these buyers agents are buying pre-market, off-market. So I think that figure would probably be even lower.
Well, going back to Perth, so as we were saying, properties are selling insanely quickly in Perth. Days on market are just 11 days. Is it possible for days on market to fall even further?
Oh, it's I mean, technically, to be able to, from a statistical point of view, counting the statistics, it would probably be difficult, because if they fall any further, it's almost no point on them with them being on the market, and that's where I think there's probably a two-tiered market now in Perth, and this is what the rise of the buyer's agent is doing in a lot of areas now where the market's hot. A lot of investors are buying, and a lot of these properties are getting bought up before they even hit the market. So this 11 days are the ones that don't even are the ones that actually make it to market. Whereas if we were to count the ones that don't even make it to market, then that would probably half. And this is where the monopoly and in most markets, and the duopoly in others of the listing portals are starting to be really challenged by the buyer's agent, and because a lot of these properties aren't even going to market.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Owen, because we're both really big fans of buyer's agents who provide a lot of value to buyers in every sort of market, whether it's going up, down, and sideways. But I think particularly in this sort of market where it is so hard for buyers, it is so intensely competitive, in that sort of market, I think a buyer's agent is probably offering the most value.
Absolutely, absolutely, because they get to, if they've got the relationships with the sales agents, and they can get these properties before they go to market, and have the ability to be able to buy them before they go to market, then it's then it comes down to quality and whether they're doing all the right due diligence, and that's where you need to seek out a good buyer's agent.
Well, thanks very much for the chat, Owen. Loved it as
Yeah,
always.
cool. That seemed to go very quickly this week, Nick. So thank you again for putting the news together, and can't wait for next week's.
Looking forward to chatting next week.
All right. Thanks, Nick.